Welcome to this month's Greg Griffith Leadership Podcast. Join Greg Griffith as we together learn what it means to be leaders of our world as we faithfully love and faithfully lead. Like, share, rate, and review this podcast with your friends and others of influence, for they too are looking for people like you to help them lead in love day to day. Without further ado, here is your host, Greg Griffith.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for being back with us at Greg Griffith Leads, and I'm so excited for today because today I am joined by a good friend and a guy who's uncommon. And you're uncommon because he sits front row every single Sunday, and I absolutely love it. There's a lot of jokes about Lutherans that they were always in the back row, and my buddy Nate here, Nate Suck is his name, and he is from Nebraska, been at King of Kings for 2 years, and he is leading from the front, but he's also leading in life. And so welcome, Nate. So glad you're here, man.
Hey, thanks. It's been 2 years. We've been wanting to do this.
We've been talking about it. I know.
A little bit.
I know.
So it's been nice. I appreciate it.
Really good. Really good. So, Nate, what is the most exciting thing you've done this summer?
Oh, most exciting thing? Probably the trips I've been on. Went and saw my sister. She lives in California now. Been there for about a year with her husband and my 2 nephews now. Then my parents have a place in Maine, so they go down once a month. Was just there earlier August, and just get away. That's probably the best things I've done this year so far, besides all the weddings I've been in.
Wow. Well, I love it. So you got California, you got Maine, and you live in Nebraska. You've got the country covered from coast to coast.
Yes, I do.
All the way in the middle.
Yes, I do.
I absolutely love it. So you're a pharmacist. How did you get into that?
Yeah. So pretty much I graduated from Aurora, Nebraska. That's where I went to school, or high school. And football was always my passion, and didn't want to go to a small college. I was, being looked at or recruited to go play at Hastings or Wesleyan or, those D2, D3 schools. And I had a couple of friends that played for Nebraska, and I knew I had the competitive edge for it. 5'9" though. At that time, I think the most I ever weighed was 200 pounds. And I wanted to go to a big college. So what you find out a lot of times is people that grew up in a small town want to get out of the small town and experience life a little bit. And the plan was to try and walk on. So I tried out twice. Obviously didn't get recruited. And my father said, "You're not going to go make money playing football. You got to think of other things." Well, I'm a concrete kid, come from a bunch of entrepreneurs. Dad has a concrete company, and didn't know quite what I wanted to do. Thought about a cook, thought about physical therapy, thought about athletic trainer, but got to thinking I don't want to be around sports unless I'm going to be playing it. And science has always been near and dear to me. More so, science answers questions for me of where we come from. That's always been a childhood question of mine. How does all this work? Where do we come from? And I've always had a niche of helping people. And I thought about being a medical doctor, but I hated institutionalized schooling. I didn't see at that time a desire to go to school for another 10 years. And Dad said, "Well, go check out pharmacy." Didn't know much about pharmacy. And so the type of personality I am or have is once I start something, I finish it. So I enrolled in prerequisites at 19 after pouring concrete in Texas the first summer after graduating finishing freshman year. Started my own first pharmacy job. Started off as a tech or a driver, then driver tech construction, because he figured out what I did also. The construction side of things, and completed undergrad with a biochem and chem and math minor. I have a lot of interesting stories about college, some good, some bad, and didn't get in to pharmacy school the first time I applied. So shot up North Dakota and poured concrete around the winter time for North Star Oil Company with mud jockeys, and reapplied. got an email saying we want to see better scores on your PCAT, and that's a pharmacy college admissions test. So you have to test into being able to go to a professional school. And I took it 3 times. I emailed them back and I said, hey, I'm not going to retake this. I've done it 3 times, paid for it all myself. And I guarantee you, if you accept me, though, I promise you won't regret it. And the day before my birthday, I got an acceptance letter. So I shot from North Dakota back to Omaha now. And while I was in pharmacy school, disclaimer, college was just always super hard. High school, easy. College was just super hard. And throughout my curriculum there, my 3rd year of pharmacy school, I actually started a nonprofit foundation I called it Rags to Riches. The UNMC or Nebraska Medicine actually helped form the account, but I figured out what a 501c3 was because I saw that there's scholarships that were formed in the late 1800s, and I was just wondering, how is there money still in this when the person's dead? And they said, oh, and they explained it all. And I had this vision of actually taking care of the homeless population. Because some background of mine is, as a boy, my parents were together, eventually got divorced. Mom went to prison for about 8 years. She got into meth and got out in and out of treatment centers and halfway houses. Ended up homeless in Omaha, met somebody, 2 alcoholics, made the situation even better. But she passed away when I was 20. And in medical school and pharmacy school, they really push, take care of those that can't take care of themselves. They talk about, going above and beyond for people. And money makes the world go round. And I know these institutions have a lot of money. And I'm looking around and I'm seeing all the problems in Omaha that's currently that people are currently facing. And I never see any programs really out of the institutions that are pushing the agenda to help people, right? Formulating some sort of system to help the need. There's a lot of people that don't put the priority to take care of themselves. And my mom was one of them, right? And she was homeless. She was at Sienna Francis House. And I just thought, okay, where medicine is going, not a lot of people know where it's going. Pharmacists, particularly the profession, are always striving to do more for the public. And I thought about, something easy is vaccinations, just simple vaccinations, flu shots, pneumonia shots, those sort of things. And I thought it would be cool for the pharmacy students to actually go to the homeless shelters and just offer this stuff for free. And so I went around to businesses, raised a bunch of money, threw it in a 501c3. I'm pretty sure it's still going. I kind of stepped away after I graduated, but that's what I did to prove to myself I can be innovative and actually accomplish things for the good of people. That's what I accomplished in my 3rd year. And then in my last year, my journey is you do your clinical. So I went all spectrums. I went from associations, hospital, research, and then the traditional routes that you have to complete. And there's a clinic. I used to live in Exarban, and there's a clinic that was built. And I did a rotation there, and this guy shows up with a long beard, orange beard, Harley Davidson shirt on. And I'm not a cookie cutter person, more so how I grew up, I think. And introduced himself. How'd you hear about this? Well, I like to have fun, and I'm a smart aleck a little bit. And I said, well, I actually watched this place get built. And he laughed and said, I did too. My response was a couple of people from New Zealand that I thought wanted to create this one-stop shop. I'm a naive provider. I have no idea what I'm doing, nor I understand the system. But he laughed and he said, it's a couple of people from Ireland, and he had an Irish accent. Come to find out, he's a pharmacist from Ireland who started a doctor's clinic. And since I'm an entrepreneur, a light bulb went off and it told me I don't have to follow the traditional route because that's not what I wanted to do, especially being in it for almost a decade. I didn't want to do the traditional route. And I befriended him. He ended up becoming a good mentor, and he started telling me about resources to investigate, to learn more of the business side and the system side of healthcare. And I graduated in 2019 from pharmacy school, 2020, I formed my first company. I've never formed an LLC before, but I taught myself how to do that. And then I spent a whole year going around to doctors' offices pitching what's called a collaborative practice idea. So what I do, particularly as a pharmacist, they have a term called ambulatory care, which is duties similar to a primary care provider in managing patients. But I wanted to do it independently and not within an institution. And so my grandpa ended up becoming my first patient in 2020. He's passed away now. It's my dad's dad. But background of him is he had a stroke way before I was born, so he couldn't use his right arm, couldn't talk, had a bum leg. Grandma died 7 years prior to that. Dad has multiple things he's involved in. Also taking care of his dad, who we weren't going to stick into a nursing home because I wouldn't put anybody in a nursing home if they didn't have a lot of money, and that's the Medicaid population, and he had disability most of his life. And the whole goal for people is they want to stay at home as long as possible for the most part. I'm just going to say in general. And so I started this one service, and it was kind of for free, where I would monitor him, and then I would communicate with his doctors on things I'd like to see change. So I was able to prove that we can get him off his diabetes medicines. He didn't need to be on diabetes medicines anymore. We kept that under control. He also had what's called chronic kidney disease. Most people get it when they get older. But his kidney function was actually improving, and his nephrologist was wondering what we were doing. It was nothing new, pretty much being a liaison between medicine and a caregiver, and actually advocating for patients and doing something about a circumstance and actually testing the boundaries of standardized care to get away from the polypharmacy world, so taking a lot of medicines, right? Looking at the risks of individuals, the financial aspects of things, and just being somebody that someone can readily access and lean on when it came to healthcare. And so he was my pilot patient. And then end of 2020, after thinking that this isn't going to work, I landed my first collaborative practice agreement, and it's sort of grown from there on what I do as a pharmacist. I do wellness visits, E&M visits, which is your normal office visits with providers. I'm the first pharmacist to do phlebotomy, first pharmacist to independently prescribe a drug underneath this collaboration. And the services just keep growing and growing because my whole goal is to make awareness to the public that pharmacists are competent enough to take care of people. I'm not going to cure cancer. I'm not going to take a scalpel to somebody. But general care pharmacists are capable of doing this, and we should be able to get paid for it. And it's just because more providers are leaving the practice of medicine. Who are we going to go see? And so my overall goal currently is to influence medicine, influence the perspective of healthcare for patients and people, and let them know what the problems currently are and actually do something about it.
That's what a lofty and wonderful goal, and what a tremendous innovation and entrepreneurial mind you have. I love that. Let me ask this question. Let me go back. So the story of your mom, and the addiction, and then the results of the addiction from incarceration to then homelessness, to further addiction, and that. Can you describe a little bit, how did that play at all into your passion for what you're doing? Because I see a thread there. And then two, can you talk a little bit about how did that play at all into your faith?
Yeah. I'll go on tangents. That's just how my mind works. But to start off with your first question, addiction's real. And my mom was a great mom. She loved her kids. The last voicemail I ever got from her, like 2 days before she died, is, don't worry about me. Good luck on your finals. Just leave it alone, right? And a disclaimer on that, because I'm not perfect. I'm far from perfect. I actually cheated in college, should have got expelled. They gave me a second chance, and this is in undergrad. Did what they were told me I needed to do and accomplished that. And how the addiction played a role in what I do currently, Since I was a kid, I've always been that grandson or that kid. Maybe it's the firstborn issue, right? I'm the firstborn. But I have this like savior complex, I think, because I couldn't do, no matter how much, even my father at the time, or definitely my sister, no matter what we did, what we said, we weren't changing her behaviors, right? And I think the control aspect of wanting to control the change made an impact on where I'm at currently in life with healthcare, because I want to control the situation for people, right? So I think the addiction in the background and knowing how helpless people get, really seeing the bottom of the barrel of life, just in general here in America for sure, but seeing the bottom of the barrel at an early age really swayed me to want to take care of people, because I've been doing it since I was a kid. You know, as a kid, I had to grow up fast and early in life. And I had to, what people who have individuals in their life with addiction problems, you know, you end up becoming the parent when you shouldn't be, you know, as a child. And I think that's what played part in that. The faith aspect of things, because I know this is a main point with this podcast, is I grew up in church. First Presbyterian Church was the church I went to all the time. My dad grew up Lutheran. He went to a Lutheran school, and I was born out of wedlock, and I was in my parents' wedding. But he baptism was very important to him, and at that time, since I was born out of wedlock, the church wasn't going to baptize me. And my dad said, no, this isn't going to happen. And he found a church that would baptize me. So I grew up Presbyterian and went to Bible studies, you know, knew about God, or I knew the stories of Jesus. I knew the stories of the Bible. I knew about God. And as a kid, the rules of the Bible really, and the influence of my father and being hard, strict, you know, following these rules for certain reasons, it kind of scared me to sway off the path, right? Because I thought I would, like, internally, I felt like I was a bad person if I did something wrong. Don't lie, don't steal, love people, love life and nature, don't hide things, right? So that kind of religion or faith dictated my personality growing up. So I've always been a part of it. And when you get to college, and this is one of the big things why I wanted to talk on this podcast, is really to resonate with anybody at any stage in life. You know, you kind of sway off of faith. And I can vent for that because when I get to college, you know, Dad wanted me to at least try alcohol because he knew a kid. I didn't do anything growing up. And when I got to college, he knew I kind of had a risky personality too. He's like, you know, you need to try alcohol. You need to know what this feels like and what it does. Well, I didn't know how to control myself in undergrad. I wasn't obliterate or out of control, right? But college and being out of a small community and getting into different groups of people in life in college, you kind of reflect back a little bit on your faith, and you're like, God, all those bad things that people kind of scared you to not do, it's really not that bad, or these people really aren't that bad. You know, I've had friends that drank all the time and didn't go to college, but they weren't bad people. And growing up, I used to judge really hard on people. I'd stay away from anybody that even had a scent of doing something bad. And then over time, you have empathy for people and realize, like, these aren't really bad people. They just make stupid choices in life, right? So I kind of swayed away from going to church and, you know, really meditating on God in my early 20s. But I will say, going through college and learning science, the question of where we come from was always there. And my connection with God and understanding God actually grew in college. So the faith kind of went away in the meditation piece of things, but my understanding of God got even more and more as I learned more about science.
So that's fascinating, right? Because we live in a world where basically it says science and faith shouldn't mix, and where we see some, and I don't like to say many, there are many faithful scientists who love God. But there are some scientists who say, as you delve into science, it actually would show you that faith doesn't mix. So explain more how science has actually shown you God.
Yeah. So, all right, first and foremost, the scientific process, right? It has to be very objective, and you can't put a lot of subjective thought into things. We wouldn't be where we're at today without that, and we have to accept that, right? But no one has been able to answer the question of where we come from. They always just bring up theories, and that's what a theory is. It's just an idea, a thought. Until proven over and over and over again, it can't be a law, right? And so let's just think on a macro scale. You get taught about your own current solar system, but then they start talking about other galaxies, right? And I got to thinking, the way I look at God, it's interesting. You ever seen a picture of a transparent head body and its gears turning in their head? That's sort of how I look at God too, believe it or not. And nowadays, if you watch some space shows, they'll expand out on these galaxies that interconnect similar to neurons. So on a macro level, which is a large scale, you can see the same physics in a micro level, right? And so the way I look at God is we're just energy. Lion King was my favorite movie growing up. I still have a little Lion King stuffed animal stored away somewhere. But it's the circle of life. And energy is neither created nor destroyed. And that's fact. And so as I learn more and more in science and pinpoint or find the parallels to God, even though it's not spoken about specifically in detail, the science part in the Bible, right? You can still come to a constructive conclusion that this energy that we talk about in church, this God, this one God that Jesus talked about, there's evidence in science that shows it. It just shows it, right? I know plenty of doctors that believe. I know plenty of scientists that believe. But these people that are in the science category, I think they're just like me. They're trying to find the understanding or practice the beliefs of what God says, and that is to help people and be a servant. And that's what healthcare is.
Yeah, that's so great. And I think I love that. I think, first of all, it takes more faith to disbelieve, because I think science actually shows us more of the reality of God, the reality of and whether or not you accept that it's the God is the revealed God that we know as Father, Son, Holy Spirit. I think it was George W. Bush that just said, there's clearly evidence of an intelligent designer, that this is not something that's circumstance or that happens. And then two, I love again, how you bring back the purpose of healthcare, which is really at the end of the day, the purpose that God has for us, which is we can sum up our purpose to love God with our whole heart, soul, and mind, and to love our neighbors as ourselves, which is to serve other people as much as we'd want to be served, which is completely. And to connect that with your passion and your vision. Let me ask you this question as we finish up today. What is the next thing that you see as an entrepreneur or pharmacist, that the next thing that you see through your faith that you are saying, this is where I think we might be going, or where I'm excited about where I'm going?
So kind of rephrase that a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess, what are you asking?
So if you think about the next 5 years
Yep.
for you, right? I know as an entrepreneur, I'm sure your mind has already been gearing and thinking about that.
Yep.
What is that next thing that you're looking at through the lens as a Christian, godly scientist, pharmacist that you're excited about?
I'm excited. One, for the opportunity to get my voice out there and to bring awareness. Where the profession goes as a pharmacist, it's kind of out of my control. It's out of my control because there's associations, there's law, right? That maybe a small, less than 5-year pharmacist chump, won't be able to influence tremendously. But if we bring awareness, we as collective can talk to our senators, talk to lawmakers, or dictate how their health is going to go because they understand the system already. They can actually have a not only care, but a business discussion with the provider that is caring for them, right? And how the operation goes. So in the next 5 years, where I see medicine going is downhill unless something has changed. The number one debt for most people is medical cost. That's the number one debt. More providers are leaving the practice because of odd and end things, which is a different podcast or different time for maybe a different podcast. But what I can say is when all hope was lost during my first year, and even up to current, I will say, I kept my nose to the ground and I kept pushing. And one thing I always tell myself is if I wouldn't be here without God, one. And if this wasn't what I'm supposed to be, where I'm supposed to be at currently, I wouldn't be here. So I'd put the faith in that God's kind of directing me, even if I'm uncertain, even if I don't have clarity. What I do currently, is this what I want to do the rest of my life? Absolutely not. I want to be the guy helping manage and point and bring the ideas to life. I have other aspirations too, other nonprofits and things like that. But where I see in the next 5 years is unknown, because I still question every day, do I need to change it up or do I keep going?
Well, I'm thankful for you because I know, I think I just read, and by just read, meaning 6 to 8 months ago, something like, I think within the next 5 or 10 years, that something like 2/3 of the American population, which would be around 200 million people, will be on some sort of pharmaceutical drug, which is staggering to think about. I mean, just staggering to think about that many people will be on some sort of pharmaceutical drug. And so to know that there's an advocate and to know that there's someone who is actually working so that you're off the pharmaceutical drugs, so that they're looking out for your care and your management, that's in pharma, which is not getting a great reputation right now, right? I mean, we hear everything, is just such a blessing. And so I would say to you, as a person who believes God puts us in our vocations to do ministry, to love and serve one another, I'm so thankful that he has put you into that he's given you this amazing passion and this mind to disrupt a system. And it just takes one. Steve Jobs was a disruptor in the computer industry. And today, good, bad, or otherwise, we have a whole different computer world because of one disruptor who then someone else came along and said, I want to disrupt with you in the name of Bill Gates. So keep disrupting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing, I'll state is until we get to the next topic of why I really wanted to talk to you and talk to the public on this podcast is there's a term called functional medicine. Vitamins are super important. Movement is super important. Okay?
Yeah.
I know that you get in the gym. I see the videos.
Yeah.
It's super important. 100 years ago, the male bone structure was denser than it is today. And we were meant to work with our bodies. And there's always these oddball things. That's why medicine is there, right? Because you got genetic issues, unfortunately, that you won't make it very far without them. If you get a cough, doodle, cold, you want an antibiotic possibly, right? So there's always places, but functional medicine is looking at the body and seeing what the root cause is. And a lot of times when that root cause doesn't get addressed over a long period of time, it's almost irreversible because it has other complications that now you have to manage with pharmaceutical drugs. But, you know, the number one thing I will always say is a provider or healthcare can give you all the tools in the world. And that's with medicine, with advice, with imaging, with surgery, right? But it's up to you, just like everything else in life. It is up to you to make those changes. If not, I'm in business, right? And that's not what I want. It also starts with policy. There's over 2,000 ingredients that are put in our foods that are illegal in other countries, right? So it starts with the food we eat too, and what's readily accessible, but it's multifactorial. And what I see in life, you know, we always talk about the hopes and dreams. In church, you'll talk about revelations. Life is going to still play out the way it plays out. There's going to be greed. There's going to be all that stuff. So I don't see us reversing time. But it's about saving as many people as we can.
Amen. Yeah. So tell me more. Tell me what do you want to make sure we know?
Yeah. So I'm going to tell my story of how I actually got here to this church.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. Throughout college, you know, even professional school, pharmacy school, I always question myself. I'm not the smartest person. Always negative thoughts. I'm not good enough, but I just keep pushing forward, right? And I started dating after pharmacy school. Okay, so I'm late in the game, don't know the love life. Plus, based on my background, I didn't know how to feel love. I didn't know how to give love. We know as time goes on, your friends start to develop families. You know, many people have placed themselves in my box where you think you're behind the 8 ball. So started dating, also flip homes on the side too. So I was doing that at the time with a buddy, which ended up folding. I have another little real estate company that I flip homes with, but there was a lot of things going on. So I had a lot of financial stress in learning the business side of life with having 2 companies. I was dating people and things just weren't working out in my favor. And the last girl I dated, she pretty much had an affair on me after 6 months, right? And it wasn't the breakup that got me into this crazy spiral. My sister and I are close. My younger brother now is getting close with my sister and I because I have 2 stepbrothers. I have a stepmom and 2 stepbrothers too. But anyway, my sister was moving to California. Family's super important to me. You lose a parent, you understand the values of life. 20 years down the road, you know, I don't want to have any regrets that I didn't have the opportunity to see people I care about more often. And more so it's because in the hospice world, there's 3 things people think about before they die. Was their life meaningful? Any regrets they have? And did they change people's lives? And I've always known that since I was young, once I got into pharmacy. And so I always want to eliminate those as much as possible. So I had the ex-girlfriend situation. I had my business that was putting the housing that was putting me in financial distress. I had the pharmacy gig I was creating that wasn't working out well. That I think I have these goals, right? You're going to reach in 5 years you're going to reach this at that time and you're going to feel fulfilled. Well, I wasn't reaching that. I wasn't feeling fulfilled. While living in Omaha up to 2 years ago, I had roommates that helped pay my mortgage while I was in school, right? And it came to the point where the last roommate who was there with me at day 1, we're 30 years old. It's time for us to separate and go. And where I just was at in life, I started developing clinical depression. I've never experienced that before, ever in my life. People get depressed, people get down on themselves, but when you read it in a textbook and you can understand, but I would never wish that on anybody to experience clinical depression. What I did is I started going to church and going to church every Sunday, and I was listening to sermons all the time too, and working out. I knew what I needed to do for my mental health. Nothing was working. And my prayers were like, get this pit out of my stomach, get me on course of where I'm supposed to go, because I'm kind of controlling my life. I have these things, these visions, because there's a verse in the Bible that, paraphrasing, but imagination's everything. It's the preview of life's coming attractions that God has for you. And I think that's what's hit on last week or 2 weeks ago. And so anything that is good in your mind is what God has for you. You just got to put in the work and pursue it. And so those things I had and was pursuing, I started questioning, is this even where what I'm supposed to be doing? I'm unhappy. Things in life just aren't working out. And it got to a point where I had a dream. And throughout my whole life, people can tease me, and that's always been me. I can't trash talk back very well. I can take it. But in my dream, people were kind of teasing me, and I said, well, I just want you to know I've been thinking about killing myself. And I woke up, and from July to November of 2022, I was dealing with this depression, and I told my sister my dream one time. She got concerned. She told my parents. Now I got 3 people concerned about me, which has never really been a thing. Nate's always been the motivator, always been the advice giver. When it comes to siblings, I leaned on Dad more for advice and things like that and keep me accountable. But people were very, very concerned about me. And I do have a gun. I do have my concealed carry and stuff. And I'm pro-life. But I was waking up so tired all the time. And I'm not proud to say this, and it's not my behavior, but it got to a point where I was drinking about 3 or 4 IPAs a night, right? Wasn't making me feel any much better. I was just in this state. And so it got to end of October, and when my roommate was going to move out, that's when I was probably going to do it. And so it was the beginning of November, and I go to Lincoln and I do a vaccine clinic, and I get home late at night because I was working like 14 hours a day for 40 weeks straight almost. It was insane. And I get home, I grab groceries, I get in my truck, and I hit the steering wheel and curse in frustration. I'm so frustrated that this thing isn't out of me. These thoughts of do it, just end it, just you're tired, just get done with it, kept getting louder and louder. And I go home. Roommate's still there watching TV. I remember I go in my bathroom, I take a shower, I get out of the shower, I shut the lights off, and I say, if I do this, this is all I'm going to see. I go downstairs in my little man cave basement, and my sister texts me, Nate, how you doing? How you feeling? Good days, bad days, Ashley, highs and lows. I'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And a disclaimer of what I did is, when I was a boy, I used to seclude into myself. So people would always ask if you're okay. Well, mom's doing her thing. Internally, I'm torn up inside, right? Life just isn't the cookie cutter picture perfect like a lot of my friends have. And what I always used to do, because I admired my father who showed love, but he didn't show when he was hurting. That's how I resembled myself. A man who doesn't show his emotions, just pushes through, right, and just deals with it and tries to fix the problem. And so what I decided to do is I'm going to block everybody that normally gets a hold of me on my phone. So I have a morning text with my family every morning that says good morning, right? I have certain friends that I talk to almost on a daily basis. And I told myself, or I knew what I was doing was bad because I was going to put other people in distress. They're going to be concerned about me, more so because 3 people know what's been going on in my mind right now. And I told myself, if I don't do this, though, for the sake of other people's well-being and I'm still dying inside, what is the point? So I blocked everybody. And for 2 years up to that point, another side story that correlates is my mom's sister, her youngest was dealing with seizures for 2 years. So what I've come to find out is when you have people in medicine, your family members and friends kind of lean on you to get some advice, what's going on, so on and so forth, because you maybe only have 30 minutes and with a healthcare provider, only 10 minutes with the guy actually making the decisions or girl making decisions for you, right? And so I was working with them. Well, I wake up that morning now. I go back to Lincoln for vaccine clinic. And I get an email from my dad. Well, I totally forgot about email. And the email said, Nate, I haven't been able to get a hold of you. I'm on the interstate. I'm past York. I'm on my way to Omaha. Please get a hold of me. My conscience wasn't completely dead yet, so something was still there. And so I decided I'm going to unblock him. But people that have clinical depression are rude and short to people they normally aren't rude and short to. And I was rude to him. Don't worry about me. I'm working. I'll talk to you later. Don't worry about me. And he's like, well, I figured something bad happened. All right, I'll flip back around. Moving forward, I get a text message from my aunt. Dawson is his name. And my aunt said Dawson just had back-to-back seizures at basketball practice. He went to the ER. They found a tumor in his brain. He is now at Children's Hospital. Perfect. We know exactly what was causing the seizures. He was diagnosed with epilepsy, but here's a caveat, and you can do this fun experiment. If you close your eyes and push on your eye, you can see a black dot because your nerves, it can either be chemical or an actual object pushing on that nerves that stimulates it. So he's having seizures because there's this slow-growing tumor pushing on his nerves. Still feeling the way I'm feeling, dead tired, super depressed. I tell her, okay, Aunt Tara, I'm doing shots. I'll be at Children's after I get off work. Well, what's kind of nice about being a contractor is I don't have to work 8 hours specifically. I work on my time when I'm needed. And so I finish at 12. I go to Children's Hospital, driving, still thinking negative thoughts, still feeling the way I'm feeling. I get to Children's. I get to the hospital room. There's doctors in there. And they're explaining what the process is going to be and what they're going to be doing. Dawson's just hanging out in the bed, fine and content, because my aunt and uncle are very spiritual individuals. And I grew up listening to my uncle talk about angels and demons. His dad was an old pastor. I'd be like, whatever, Uncle Elijah, sure. But don't take this the wrong way, but he's one of those grounded Christians, meaning he's still really cool. Has lived, not risky life, but has lived what a standard culture, U.S. culture life is like, right? So he wasn't a Bible beater and forcing things down people's throats, but I grew up to those stories. And so they're telling my aunt and uncle what they're going to be doing. I'm taking what they're saying and put it in lay terms. They find out who I am, what I do as a job. They show me the scan. I see evidence, half-inch tumor on the left temporal lobe. They leave the room. And I'm sitting on the hospital bed while Dawson's in the chair. And my uncle's dad texted him and said, hey, I know a guy in Omaha. Do you mind if he comes and prays for Dawson before the procedure tomorrow? He was getting surgery to have it removed. Well, that guy was busy, so that guy reached out to another guy, and I always forget his name, but the first guy comes to King of Kings. And what I was told is he's just a praying monster. He just prays and prays and prays. Well, that guy reached out to a gentleman named Chris Kildosher, I believe. Eventually, Chris reaches out to Elijah and says, and Elijah's my uncle, and says, hey, heard what happened. You mind if I come pray? Eventually, Elijah asked Dawson, do you mind if this random guy comes and prays? Dawson's like, yeah, I don't care, sure. And he shows up. He comes from California, tells us his story. He was about 18, 19 years old, drinking a beer, reading the Bible, and the Holy Spirit came into him. And what he does is he travels all over the world, and he's seen miracles happen. And his stories is back pain gone before his eyes like that. They do a repeat image of the individual's back. the person had back surgery, had rods placed in there, but he said that the image showed the rods were gone, but the wires were still set in place. And then another story he said is, I've seen tumors underneath armpits go away before my eyes. I'm sitting on the bed, Greg, and I'm mad. I am so mad because I don't want to hear these type of stories. One, my cousin has a brain tumor, and praying isn't going to help this situation. And on top of that, I've done what I needed to do, and I know God's not transactional. I know it's not transactional, but the Bible and church and everybody encourages individuals to meditate, to pray, to listen to sermons, to reflect, to do all those things. And I was doing that for 6 months and nothing was working. And I believe in God and I believe in Jesus. I believe the stories of Jesus and the teachings. That's why I live the life the way I live it. And nothing worked for me. After he gets done with his stories, because I didn't say anything, I'm not going to ruin the mojo of the room. My suffering is nothing in comparison to Dawson's suffering. He's going through surgery, but I had a lesson learned that suffering is suffering. There's no measurement in comparison. Suffering is still suffering. And people, it's not good for anybody, and however it's presenting itself. And so he stands up. He puts his hand on Dawson. My aunt and uncle to my right put their hands on Dawson. I traditionally bow my head and fold my hands. And he's casting this tumor out. It isn't a normal prayer saying, please give this family courage and strength through this difficult time. No, he's demanding this tumor to go. And he says, God, if this is your will, upon the repeat scan tomorrow, because what happens, and you probably have experienced this, is when you go through surgery, you may get another repeat scan. So the surgeon knows exactly where they're going that day. And he said, upon the repeat scan tomorrow, the tumor is going to be gone. But God, if this is not your will, you're going to guide these surgeons' hands to completely remove the tumor. Dawson has a long life to live and a lot of work to do for you. He then blessed his kidneys. And in my mind, while everybody's praying, I'm like, you can bless any part of his body. He had seizures back to back the night before. It puts a lot of stress on the body. He's on anti-epileptic medicines. That puts stress on the body. Like, you can bless any part and you could be right? And this is the point of the podcast. He then turns to me and puts his hand on me, and I'm still folding my hands and closing my eyes. And he says, I'm not only here for Dawson, I'm here for this man. And he says, this man has been dealing with voices in his head for a very, very long time. Voices of abandonment, worthlessness, and not being good enough. I command those voices to go. The next thing he said is, he's also been dealing with some partnership issues. And pretty much he said, I'm asking you, Lord, to give him a sense of peace, reflecting on not only the pharmacy, but the housing situation. By that time, I stopped praying. I just looked at him with this guy's hand on my head. He then said he just got out of a relationship and he feels like he's behind. And I'm here to let this man know to stop worrying and give him a sense of peace. And he took his hand off me then, and he does this, and he says, this man's trying to get somewhere in life, and he keeps hitting this barrier and keeps hitting this barrier, and he doesn't seem to find a way to break through. And I'm here to let this man know to stop worrying. You're going to be just fine. Pretty much what he's saying is, those visions in your head, just keep pursuing. Even though it may not be on your timeline, keep going and keep following that voice and those visions in your head, right? Because I want prosperity. I want all that other stuff, right? And he then said he's also dealing with some addiction issues. And I'm here to ask you, Lord, to relieve those addictions from him. Two things. One, I started drinking more, which normally isn't my personality. And number two, an addiction I have is living my day-to-day life with a problem. Oh, and never bliss. I don't experience bliss, but there's always something going on, whether it's immediate family, because I still struggle with my other stepbrother who has addiction issues, my dad's two middle brothers, also addicts, like all this stuff. So there's always stuff in my life that's going on. And the last thing he said is, I'm here to also let this man know that God heard you cry in your car or vehicle 2 nights ago. Well, it was the night before, but then he went to my aunt, prayed about some things, went to my uncle, prayed about some things, and I'm watching him in the room. And he started walking back around and he says, I also have this name Sam coming to me. And I'm here to let the Johnsons know that Sam is where he needs to be. So the story behind Sam is their oldest, who is in college, got her first and brand new boyfriend 2.5 years ago. And what they told me is Sam comes from a separated family and both sides are dysfunctional. Well, the Johnsons, who is my aunt and uncle's last name, they're a good family, a good Christian-based family. And that's what that meant to them. But how did that name come, right? By that time, I intervened and I started drilling him. You know, how'd you know this information? What'd you feel? Like, what just happened? Because as he prayed for me, that pit in my stomach started going away like watching a static TV, you know, that pixelated buzzing. Everybody thought I was mad at him. He wanted me to go walk with him to his vehicle afterwards. So I did. And I testified to him and said, you know, I've always admired the stories of Jesus, blah, 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 blah. And told him about what I was going through. And he said, first and foremost, Nate, you were saved a long, long time ago. Okay, Chris. The second thing he said is those voices aren't you, they're evil spirits. And I said, Chris, come on. Everybody has negative self-talk. Everybody has a little voice in their head. He says, I get that, Nate. But this is when I was like, oh, cool. He's grounded. And I think he's right. He said, anything that is not good is not from God. Okay. So that kind of like swayed me away from the demonic and those voices and negative spirits. And actually, I'm starting to believe that more now instead of it's just the human being nature. And then he said, tonight I want you to read Romans chapter 8 if you want to. So we left, we hugged it out, we left, I got his phone number, and I started walking back and I started reflecting on myself that the pit in my stomach was gone. I haven't felt this great ever in my life. I felt so much bliss and just so much clarity, just peace, I guess. Not clarity, but peace. The voices in my head were gone. My aunt and uncle felt great. And coming to my cousin, the tumor was benign. It was completely removed, and he's off all medicines, and it's been 2 years remission now, pretty much.
Oh, praise
so,
God.
you know.
Yeah.
But I read Romans chapter 8 that night. And that same night, I also watched a video, and everything clicked. And Chris did not have magical powers, nor was he blessed with a specific power to do what he does. He literally had the Holy Spirit in him, just like the disciples did, just like we all can have too, that work in us, that made those miracles happen. He just had these things coming to him, and it's the Holy Spirit. It's the string that connects God to us. Mm-hmm. And Jesus is the sanctification to have that work, right? The blood, to not be damned for our sins, which is death eternal, right? Right? So everything clicked that day. And now it's not common to talk about God in healthcare, but I tell my patients this story. I told my coworkers, because my coworkers were concerned about me. My patients were saying I look like I'm aging. They're concerned about me, because everybody I treat or take care of, the way I look at it is we're in this we're in this game of life together, okay? And I'm going to tell you what I've went through too in my life and in my immediate life, so you can have a personal relation and an understanding that I get what you're going through. So I share this story with my patients. And what I want to tell people that listen to this podcast is there's a lot of people that come to church or watch it online or listen to sermons or read the Bible or listen to Christian music that know God's real, but is still in this like quicksand almost. You know, they don't grasp it. They don't understand it. They don't even know if this is real. They're just going to have faith because the other option of nothing being there doesn't seem right. It just doesn't seem right. But when people get convicted and know it's real, they will die with it. And so I wanted to communicate the story that I was in that boat of, I believed, I grew up in church, I brought science to God, or I connected God and science together in my own way and understanding, but I still was shaky. And now I know it's real. This stuff is real.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think there's amazing power, and I think it's really important for people to understand that our testimony and our story, no one can debate that. No one can take that away. And, even sometimes when we think that prayer doesn't work, there's nothing it can do. The reality is prayer does work. And it's not a last resort. It's always a first response. And it's what we do first. And I love this because every single person, you're absolutely right. Every single person has the ability to pray for one another, has the ability to cast out demons, has the ability to see where people's greatest needs are and do that. And so you're a reminder and a testimony that not only is our vocation to help people, but our vocation is also where we get to give a great witness and we get to share that great love. And so this has been a rich, amazing conversation, and I've really enjoyed this. And I know whoever's watching this today has as well. Do you have any closing? We're running out of time. So any quick closing thoughts?
Everybody's busy, but I just appreciate the opportunity. It feels good to get the voice out. I hope other people step up too and maybe get the opportunity to talk about how they got closer to God, and just understand that life is still going to play its course. And don't think that any bad thing should be corrected because if God doesn't fix it, he's not waiting, or he doesn't care about you. Right? Just know that the end goal is to finish the race. And we don't know that time until we're there.
Yeah. So if you're listening today, thank you for listening. Rate, like, and share this podcast. And also want to invite and remind you, you have power. You have great power in your story and your testimony, and you have a story. If you're sitting here saying, I don't have one, you do. Just look and see where God is. Nate, once again, thanks so much for joining.
Thank
Let's
you.
all keep faithfully living and faithfully leading as we faithfully love. Have a great day, everybody.
Good day, guys.
Thank you for being a part of this month's Greg Griffith Leadership Podcast. Join Greg next month for leadership insights to faithfully love and faithfully lead. Now go be terrific today.